Hello and welcome to Fun with Failure's TIFU. Since Game of Thrones is off the air, we decided to use this time to do some live action roleplay of their world. So that's why I declare myself king of my Iron Throne. As my first decree, I command that we read these 5...
Whatever, I'm the queen here. I decree we read these following stories for my people. Get Melisandre in here to res his lame ass. He isn't gonna get out of work that easy. Enjoy the show!
Before we get started, I just wanted to say that I do not speak Italian, and I did look up how to pronounce these online, but I couldn't find anything. If they sound anything like Spanish, I totally messed it up. So, I'm already pre-cooked so you don't have to roast me, but I'm sure it might happen anyway. And back to the show. I was a 16-year-old American at the time. My boyfriend and I had been in a long-distance relationship for 3 years. He was then an 18-year-old Italian. His English was fantastic. My Italian was pretty bad. We had visited each other's countries the prior summer, and I had been so quiet that the family thought I was bored, unhappy, or didn't like them. I was just happily absorbing the atmosphere and doing my best to follow the conversation. I was extremely slow because I was doing the rookie mistake of first listening, translating back to English, think of what I wanted to add, then translate that back to Italian, and finally speak it the best I could. It's extremely important to note that English and Italian, being based on Latin, have very similar words and patterns. This is important because I'm not an idiot, I just noticed patterns. To the point, on my second trip to Italy, his family of bankers, doctors, professors, and teachers all encouraged me to speak as much as possible and promised to forgive me if I made any silly mistakes. I was feeling the spotlight, and I pushed hard. I earned a few giggles, and felt very welcome. Then the day came. We had lunch with the 83-year-old retired English teacher, which was the grandma. She encouraged me to speak by speaking to me sometimes in English, and laughing that she hasn't read or spoken a word in 20 years. Aside from the occasional ads that might have some English, she was adorable, and asked me clearly in Italian what I thought of the food. I stuffed something in my mouth to bide my time, so I could translate. I made a show of chewing quickly, swallowed, then smiled broadly and said in Italian, "I love the food here. It's not like American food." Smiles of encouragement from the whole table here. It all seemed fresh and all natural. Here I paused and I looked down at the table because I knew natural wasn't the word I was looking for. And I tried again. Not processed? There's no preservatives? Preservativa? So I said, "Preservativa?" Everyone went silent. That must have not been the word. I was grasping at straws here, so I looked up to see if I was making sense to anyone. Everyone was staring down at their plates. They were burning holes in their food. I tried to look to my boyfriend for help, and his face was red, jaws tight, horribly embarrassed. Did I mention that this was a very conservative and formal family? At least a lifetime passed, with no one so much as moving, before I finally said to him, "I take it preservatives isn't preservativa?" He hissed through his clenched teeth, "No!" I looked around the table for help. No dice. They had dug their graves in the kitchen table and were entombed. So I went back to my boyfriend. "So how do you say preservatives?" He growled, "Conservativa." I was confused, and I contemplated a moment in pure silence, as I think the family waited for me to correct myself, so they could forget the incident. And because I was super intelligence over 9,000, I said, "What I said is preservativi? So what is preservativi?" I thought for a moment that my boyfriend would just throw something at me or just run. He gagged out, "Condoms!" What the heck? Thanks a lot, Italian. Seriously, that's what it means in Italian? So that's how I proved to his family that I was a slow child that couldn't be trusted to string together a sentence in semi-formal settings. I apologized and corrected my sentence. And after a short pause, Grandma said slowly and deliberately that all the food was fresh. Then she went on to suggest that in the future, since Andre and her speak English, but the parent's second language was French, that I can ask them for the word her that I needed, instead of guessing, until I was more comfortable with the language. I agreed quickly, thanked her, and apologized again, while the rest of the family quietly undied and returned to the meal as if nothing happened. His mom then casually asked me what other words I knew in Italian. I listed fruit, stores, and pasta noodles. Everything went smoothly after that, until the next year's visit at that one's cousin's birthday party at a pizzeria with the entire family. There, instead of correctly pronouncing calzone, I requested catzone. From the shocked waitress, who barely held back laughter, she informed me that she couldn't help me with that. I misrepeated this a few more times, before just turning to the menu and showing her the word, as she wiped tears from her eyes from laughing. By the grace of God, my boyfriend and I were sitting with the cousins, who couldn't stop laughing, as none of the adults heard me repeat in Italian, "I would like a giant dick, please." I've gotten to the point where I have no embarrassment for buying personal products and like stuff at the store. I know there are people who like and care for me, and that's what matters. I don't care what others think. At least a few years ago, when I was shopping at Walmart, my back was starting to hurt, and I was having trouble finding something in the pharmacy for my father. There was a bench there, so I sat down. The pharmacist was behind the counter about 15 feet away, and there were some other shoppers flittering around. The pharmacist sees me and asked me if I needed some help finding something. I thought about it for only a second, and while staying seated, I said confidently and loud enough for the pharmacist, as well as the other nearby people to hear, "Where are the stool softeners?" The pharmacist told me where to look, and I had no problem finding them. I do sometimes like to have fun though. I take the bus to the store often, and it's always $4 there and $4 back. Exact change. The Walmart I go to has a bank inside, so I go there to break a $20 bill into singles. A lot of the time, it's the same teller. One time while she was giving me singles, I felt a bit cheeky and I said, "Just so you know, I don't go to strip clubs or anything, it's just for the bus." The teller laughed and she said she never thought of that. This happened not too long ago, and I'm still not quite sure if it's hilarious or absolutely horrifying, or both. So for context, I live with my husband Mark and my 2-year-old daughter. My husband is pretty senior in his organization, and he works remotely. We're temporarily based in the US for my job, and his employer is in Germany, which means he often does video conferences on Skype, taking calls sometimes at odd hours, 8 hours difference with Germany. He had to take a call at 5 a.m., not because he had to, but because he doesn't want him being in the US to be a disadvantage when it comes to interactions with his colleagues and superiors. They're doing him a favor by agreeing to work with him remotely. I should state that this was a pretty big win for him, as his employer is pretty old-fashioned when it comes to the ways of working. You know, like the hierarchy and etc. Here's an important piece of context. His office is the guest bedroom, where I keep my clothes. It's close to our own bedroom and bathroom. You could probably see where this is going. Our routine in the morning is usually pretty standard. The kid wakes up between 6 or 7 a.m. I pick her up, play with her a bit, feed her, while the husband gets ready. He then takes over, and I get showered, get dressed, and leave the house around 8 a.m. Then my husband takes the baby to daycare. Except for this morning, Mark had one of those early video conference calls. When these happen, he's the only person out of 15 dialed onto a big screen at the boardroom. This all-hands meeting started at 5 a.m. In those cases, I'm in charge of the tornado that is my daughter. For those who don't have kids, the process of getting a 2-year-old dressed is akin to convincing a drunken friend to get home after he's had too many tequila shots. There's usually crying involved. It usually doesn't go as smoothly as you want it to, and it takes time. That therefore means I have less time to get all these things ready before 8 a.m. So I was in a rush, and I didn't think. My husband usually reminds me the day before not to play with loud toys next to the office door, or play music, or to make sure that our daughter doesn't throw a tantrum, etc. My daughter once opened the door on him while he was in a conference call. Everyone saw her, so he introduced her to his colleagues. Everyone thought it was cute. Oh yeah, let me one-up that. Hold my beer. I saw my daughter was playing nicely and quietly in our room that was adjacent to the bathroom. I went for my shower. My daughter enters the bathroom to hang out. Not unusual. She wants me to wear the fireman hat and pretend to put a fire out in the bathroom. I oblige. As I get out of my shower, still cracking jokes with my daughter, I notice there's no bath towel. I'm wet and cold. What do? I rush into the guest bedroom, where we keep the spare towels. Notice my husband is working, but I don't think anything of it. Get to the shelf without saying a word, so I don't disturb him, and reach for the towel. Complete mind blank. As I do, I'm on my toes reaching for it. I hear people laughing. The blood in my veins turns to ice. Mother of God. This morning was one of those video conference mornings. I turn around. My husband turns to me with a look of agony. Here I am, butt naked, in front of my husband's entire management team, also wearing a fire hat. I don't know what to do. To be polite, I look at the screen and I say, "Hi," with a little hand wave, and I disappear on my tiptoes, as if I haven't already massively screwed up. Without getting into too much detail, I work as a chemical engineer in a small mid-sized company. I happen to know that another team in our department has been contracted to create a non-toxic malodorant, basically a very potent stink bomb, and they just finished producing the first batch. I knew someone involved in the project, so I knew the substances in the concoction was all non-toxic, and I let curiosity get the best of me. One day on break at work, I decided to go just take a tiny whiff to see how bad the stuff was. I went to the lab room, found the labeled box, grabbed one of the vials of malodorant. How bad could it be, right? I wasn't gonna huff it or anything. Just open it under a fume hood, waft it with my hand, and quickly close the vial. Then something happened that I didn't plan. I opened the vial, and as soon as I got a whiff, I immediately started retching because it was so disgusting. I lost my hold on the vial, and it dropped to the floor, spilling the substance all over the floor. It was minutes before I regained my composure, and meanwhile, other people are making ungodly noises in the hallway. As the smell hit them, they had to evacuate the whole wing of the building, which wasn't usable again for a few days. I got suspended for work, but thankfully I didn't get fired. But that smell, it still haunts me to this day. After dropping my son off at the daycare this morning, I decided to grab breakfast on my way home. The only place on the way home was a breakfast chain that was in my area, and it was always packed. I decided to bite the bullet and just do it. So I'm sitting in my car waiting for my order. I finally get to order, so I'm waiting for the few people in front of me to get theirs. That's when I had a sharp pain in my nose, and I feel a booger bothering me. So I immediately set out to remove it. About this time, the car at the front pulls off, and we all pull up in line. Now I'm about one car away from the window, and I finally get the booger that's bothering me out of my nose. And it's a monster. It's wet and huge, and at that moment, the car pulls off, and I pull up to the window. I hand her the money and set my food in the passenger seat. When she hands me back my change, I go to grab it, and notice too late that I use the same hand that I picked the booger with. And I realized I never wiped it off. I took a look at her face and she was mortified. I'm pretty sure she touched it. I can never go back there now. Thanks for watching. Man, I'm sore. She won't let me be king. She said no one lame should be king on this show. Oh well. I want to give a special thanks to my Patreons, especially to the 2 new members. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. If you want to get advanced audio broadcasts that you can download and listen to anywhere you want, join my Patreon for just $1 a month. It will greatly help the channel. If not, glad to have you. Just keep on coming and enjoy. Also, I hope you go check out Reddit Originals. They're really good, and I think you would enjoy it. They've got the quality of some of the bigger channels, but they're quite new. It is very impressive. So if you like Reddit stories, go check them out. You won't regret it. Thank you again for listening, and remember, have fun with your failures, or they'll have fun with you.